Hello, in this video we're going to cover sanding and a bit of finishing. I always get asked on how much should I sand and what kind of finish should I use? Well, the answer is simply what kind of finish are you going to use, whether it be paint, latex, or thinner variety, or are you going to use an oil? That will determine how much you sand. So let's get started with the sanding first. The two sanders I'd recommend the most if you're new into woodworking are the random orbit sander and the palm sander. However, if all you have is just a simple block of wood with some sandpaper wrapped around it, that'll work just as fine. Other equipment that I'd recommend for any sanding operation is, of course, some headphones for the noise levels, a dust mask of some sorts to help save your lungs, and a vacuum hose that you can connect to your sander. As one, it'll make it less messy. Two, it'll help save your lungs again. And three, the sander is working less hard as it has less material to push through. Now there are these dust collection devices like this. You can just simply snap onto the sander, and it works really great for when you're making some homemade wood putty. You have that dust, mix it with a little bit of wood glue, you'll never know the difference. But if you are in like me, working in a confined space, dust mask is still going to be of very good use as there's still a lot in the air. We have some saw marked timber here, and we just simply put some pencil marks on it, and we're going to come through with some 40 grit paper on a random orbit sander, and the pencil marks help tell us where we've been and where we're going to go to. When we're doing this, we're not going to press down so hard that the random orbit no longer orbits, and by doing so in a slow, nice manner, every other progression of sandpaper is going to go a lot quicker and a lot smoother. So we sanded the 40 grit, 60 grit, 80 grit, and now we're going to go to the 120 grit. Same as before for the 40, 60, 80, and now 120. We're just going to take a pencil, mark it out, and then sand. After I use 120, this is where I stop and decide how much further I want to go with my sanding. If I'm using a latex paint, that will be perfectly good. It's going to be nice and smooth, and the latex will adhere to it. If I'm going to use a thinner paint than latex, then I would go to 180 or to 240 and stop there. However, if I'm going to use oil, I might progress past 240 all the way up to 800. This depends on how shiny of a background that I'm looking for. However, there is a couple of things to remember when progressing past the 120 point. For example, on this board right here, there's a hairline crack right there. So what you could do is put a little glue in the crack and then come back with that 120 grit with no vacuum attachment, and that crack would soon disappear as it would get filled up with sawdust and the glue that you put in. The other piece of equipment that I would highly suggest is the humble cloth, or in this case, teeth shirt. Here's why I say a cloth comes in handy. Here's a typical work surface that anyone's going to have. It's going to have bits of glue, paint, whatever. Then we have our nice, smooth, sanded surface that we just created. And what we do, we flip it right over onto this rough surface where it's going to get scratched up and everything else from the sander vibrating on it, moving it back and forth on little levels. So instead of allowing it to do that, simply take a cloth, put it there, and continue sanding. That way you can get a very nice smooth surface and not come up with marks on the sides that you've just done. And if you have to go into a curved surface, such as this picture frame piece I have right here, just use some doweling wrapped around a piece of sandpaper, and just go back and forth. And lastly, if you have to sand some dowel, okay, without doing it perversely, is to simply put it into a drill and then take it and move sandpaper around it like that. Yeah, it saves a lot of joke time. So I hope you liked all the sanding tips that we have today. If you have any questions or comments, I'd love to hear about them. And if you're not a subscriber, please do so. Love to see you around. Take care.